Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, January 15th, 2021. Hope everyone had a great week. We are heading into the weekend, hopefully throwing some positive vibes out there. All could use a little bit of that. Anyway, let's get into the space weather section, and then we'll move into a couple articles, and then I wanted to talk about temperatures as well. So first of all, let's take a look at our solar wind speeds coming in at 305.3 kilometers per second with a density of 11.7. We are 12 days in a row now without sunspots. Let's take a look here at the SDO, and yeah, we have bright active regions right now. But they are not qualified. They do not possess the dark cores that's needed to become sunspots. So this is 12 days in a row now without sunspots. And I know I'm playing the numbers game here, but that is 80% of the year thus far that has been spotless. Today, cosmic radiation dosage rate's not really going up that much, 8.1%. During the depths of this minimum, we saw conditions that were dropping all the way, that were as high as 10.7 to 11.1. That was the average during this. But now we're starting to see a little bit of decline of cosmic, but not enough to where you're going to notice it, honestly, in the weather headlines. But nonetheless, Cape indices sitting at a 1 with a 24-hour max of a 2. There is a coronal hole that was Earth-facing. We have low Cape indices. Well, you know what that means. And I'll talk about that too as well. We usually put out a small to moderate earthquake watch, pardon me, for the next 24 to 48 hours. And I'll get a little bit more in depth about that. That southern coronal hole, we are supposed to see solar wind speed increase on Monday, and not much geomagnetic activity expected from this. But if you also look in the northern region, we could be dealing with another coronal hole brushing our magnetic field. Also, our TCI, that's the Thermosphere Climate Index, the very, very top of our atmosphere. It has dropped again. And again, my theory has always been whenever we increase solar wind speeds, I see the TCI temperatures go up like the next day or during that day a little bit. And when they drop and they stay low for a considerable amount of time, we also start to notice the temperatures dropping again. Just a few days ago, we were as high as 5.91. Our last broadcast on the 12th was at a 5.85. Tonight, we're at a 5.77, and our solar wind speeds are pretty low right now. So 305.3 kilometers per second is very light, very, very low solar wind that we are dealing with. Let's go ahead and take a look over at our website at thegrandsolarminimum.com at our space weather section. Take a look at solar proton flux activity is pretty flat line. Look at the KP indices, folks. And this explains why we've seen a couple of earthquakes over the last couple days as well. And I'll get into that here just in a second. But right now, let's look at the SDO in motion one more time, checking out that southern coronal hole that might have an encounter with our magnetic field. Oh, by the way, that was not Nibiru that flew by. That was a solar eclipse. Well, I think it's Earthshine. Is that what it is? Something like that, or some kind of shadow. Anyway, it has to do with the satellite being in the right position, and it gives you this optical that something just flew in front of the sun. Well, yes, it did, but it's not what you think. And let's think about this. Some of these people out here, it's funny because they thought, well, that was another planet. No, I mean, you watch the beginning of this, my goodness. I mean, this is just as big as the sun. I mean, we would all notice if another star the size of the sun went across the sun. So anyway, just thought I'd point that out there. But no, as far as coronal holes go, KPs are low. We'll extend another earthquake watch. Why not? 48 hours out. I was on the air the 12th, talked about earthquakes, and, well, here, I'll get to it here just in a second. Let's take a look. Sunspot activity possible, reaching around the eastern limb, the southern part of the star. So we might be breaking this 12-day. I said 15 to 17. It's going to be close. But, folks, those bright areas have to contain dark cores. Just because they look big and bright doesn't always necessarily mean we're dealing with sunspots. But there's a big coronal hole in front of that is now piercing the eastern limb. And so we'll see if KP indices continue to be low, because that would be a more direct shot of solar stream if this coronal hole holds up. And the one that I'm talking about is right here. But no, KPs are low, Earth-facing coronal holes. 2 days ago, I was talking about the possibility of a 6.5 or higher. Well, we didn't get the 6.5, but on the January 14th, as expected under the watch, we had a 6.2 earthquake, and unfortunately, it killed 42 people and hundreds were injured. And this happened on January 14th, around 1828 UTC. Many people are still trapped under the rubble, and rescue workers fear the death toll will continue rising. The quake was preceded by a 5.7. Today, there was a report of a 5.9. These are relevant to these particular stats that we're looking at right here on our Space Weather Station section. The KP indices are running very low, and we've had a couple of coronal hole interactions as well. And every time it seems like we put out an alert for 24 to 48 hours, it usually happens. And it has. The earthquake that I was talking about last week, that I was saying somewhere in Guatemala, well, I was a week off. But we had one today, 5.9, in Guatemala. Now, that doesn't mean I'm, onto something here. But my point is that, and I've always told this to our viewers, when you look at certain conditions on the sun, there is a unique correlation that is forming here. And it is that every time that we are dealing with an Earth-facing coronal hole, which right now, this is the last frame of images from the SDO. And yes, it is brief. It's if anything, it's just brushing. The solar wind stream from this will be just brushing it. But nonetheless, there will be an impact on our magnetic field. And with the KP indices where they are right now, if that continues, and that's how we base when we're going to see something like a 6.2 or a 6.4. Those are usually, now we haven't had a large coronal hole in a while. And that's because we're heading out of a minimum. Tell that to SPACEWEATHER.com. Solar minimum conditions are in effect. It says here, solar minimum, how can we miss you if you won't go away? Sunspots disappeared, leaving the sun blank. This is now 12 days consecutive. It says without sunspots, sun's X-ray output has flatlined and the chance of a strong flare has plummeted less than 1%. Solar activity is very low. The return of solar minimum is only temporary. And he is correct. New solar cycle 25 is well underway, and only last month the sun peppered with spots every day. The young solar cycles often take a break as they gather energy for the ascent to the solar max. Indeed, new sunspots might be just around the corner. So Dr. Tony Phillips agrees, or we agree with him, I should say, that we think our next sunspot is just beyond the eastern limb. But it's interesting, the longer we follow this stuff, the more we learn about it, the more it makes sense, at least the science part of this. But again, I'm going to put it out there again, 24 to 48 hours. We will see something again, mark my words, 6.4 or higher. And this one brought a lot of damage. It was actually downgraded, so this one could have been a 6.4. So this was really close not to mention tonight. but I'm going to call it again 6.4 or higher by the 18th. Call it that. So very unfortunate news from Indonesia, in a likely area that has been very active, along with Guatemala as of late. Heavy snow leaves 7,000 households without power across Sweden and Finland. Around 4,000 households were left without electricity supply, Finland, and another 3,000 in Sweden on Wednesday, January 13th, after heavy snowfall struck the region. Up to 24 inches of snow accumulation was reported by the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute in the northern region. In southwestern Finland, around 4,000 households lost electricity, according to their broadcaster there. While snowfall had decreased afterwards, severe cold is expected to grip the region, with temperatures dropping to negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit, or for the rest of the world, negative 25 in the coming days. You know, those beautiful pictures. Nothing too crazy about this, just showing you the wonders of winter is all. But once again, 24, that's 2 feet of snow. Every time we go live, and I know it's winter, but it seems like we have something to talk about that's at least 2 feet of snow. Freezing temperatures in Saudi Arabia is a sear for the first time since 1971. This was January 10th. Temperatures in the region dropped below 2 degrees Celsius for the first time in 50 years, according to local media. Saudi Arabia's meteorology urged residents to keep warm and avoid venturing out to isolated places because you might freeze your butt off. Sur is located in the southwestern part of Saudi Arabia on the border with Yemen. January is Sur's coldest month with an average temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. The low is 8 degrees. High is 22 at this time. So we're talking about -2. That's a big deal here, these guys. Pretty cold. And how many years have we talked about snow in the Sahara or snow in India's deserts? It's been happening a lot since every year we've been doing this for the last 4 years. So, wow. Yeah. Again, another headline. We are seeing some cold in areas that we usually don't see cold. And this is happening every winter now. Since 2017, at least, we are seeing more and more reports of record-breaking cold and snow in these regions. Now, tonight's ending thought before I go over our GFS outlook is going to be based on temperatures. And the cherry picking that is taking place all over when it comes to global warming. And here's why I'm a fan of satellite-based temperature, especially the one they're using here at UAH. Now, if you go to drroyspencer.com, you'll read all about how they pick their data. And out of the 4 satellites, you've got one satellite that's always about 6, points higher than the one they actually use in the middle. And then you've got that one that's kind of close to the middle. And then there's another satellite that's always reporting below the average, and then you have the 4th one that pulls in well below the average. What they've done is they have combined and met somewhere in the middle. And when you look at this temperature here, you see that for December, we dropped to 0.27 centigrade above baseline. And so where is this recording coming from? Well, it's 2 meters above the surface. So technically, if you're a person who is 6 foot, this is what the temperature is on top of your head. All right. The thing that I have the problem with is how much difference is there really from 6 feet in the air to the ground? Where am I going with this, you're saying? Let's take a look at some maps here. Not those maps, and not that map either. This map. I want to show you guys something here. This map here is using the base of 1981 through 2010. All right. This is also during a warmer period. And you can see that on the UAH too. We've slightly had warmer temperatures over the past 42 years. So when you're looking at temperature departures, and you're using this as the base because we are technically in the end of the warming period, the beginning of our cooling cycle over the next several decades. So we are at the very beginning of this cooling, all right? Bear with me now. So you're saying, well, maybe we should be using a temperature from a different time. No, it's too fresh. We're just now exiting this modern warming. So when I look at this number and it says 0.41 centigrade above baseline, okay. You know, you're going to get that NASA guess. They're mainstream. They're the planet's on fire according to them. But 0.41 is down from 0.53, and I think that's a reasonable drop for global lower atmospheric temperatures. In this case, surface temperatures. So, to me, when I look at these maps, it tells me that I'm looking at the one right now that is surface. And this at a 0.41, and the satellite data reads at a 0.27. And I just wonder, is there really that much difference in temperature? Because, 0.14 is, that's, to me, that's a lot for 6 feet. But not the point. I want to show you something else. And that is the main map that they use to kind of verify we're in a climate emergency. This is what they use. This is for the month of December, according to NASA. But look at the top of the map where it has 1951 to 1980. Folks, I'm here to tell you that between 1951 and 1980, those were some cold winters. I don't have to remind most of you of that. You lived it. Okay? So when you base temperature departures off of a base between 51 and 80, this is where you see the dramatic warming. This is where people are panicking about climate emergency. There is no climate emergency, folks. It's cherry picking. These people are using data that fits the narrative, and I want to share with you. I don't have the actual image that I thought I had, but I want to share this with you guys. Because this is the real reason why these folks use the This is the reason why they use this period now. Listen to this. The period of 1951 through 1980 was chosen largely because the United States National Weather Service uses a 3-decade period to define normal or average temperatures. Okay? The NASA GISS analysis effort began around 1980, so most of the recent 30 years at the time was 51 to 80. It was also a period when many of today's adults grew up, so it's a common reference that many people can remember. Now, that right there that's hilarious. well, we grew up in this time, so we remember when the weather was like it was. So that's normal. I mean, that's what this paragraph is saying. This is on NOAA, by the way, folks. And forgive me, I have the screenshot in my hand here on my phone. But if you go to NOAA, sos.noaa.gov, and look up temperature anomaly 1884 to 2012, there is a section about 4 paragraphs down that tells you why they picked this time period, because most people remember it. So it has to be normal. Guys, I should have been better prepared. I wish I would have the map that I really wanted, and I forgot to send it. That was my fault, Mari, so don't worry. But it's not here, I don't think. No. That's all right, though. So why am I rambling on about this? Well, because before 1951, we were, I know, bear with me now, we were warm. And then like back in the 1920s, I know, right? We were cold again. Can you believe it? And then 30 years before that, we were kind of warm again. And then 30 years before that, we were cooling again. So yeah, there's a pattern. So if you want to take 3 decades of temperatures, your average, wouldn't you do it in a warmer period of time? Wouldn't you say that if you lived in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and you had to judge the winters compared to now, would you not say that the winters now are not normal compared to them? Like you experience much more intense winters? So to me, I think people that grew up in these winters back then knew that this was abnormally cold. Yeah, I'm sure of it. I don't know. I just find it kind of irked me. There was a really good thread that David Birch from the UK, some of you know him as the Starman, but this guy knows his stuff, especially when it comes to ocean temperatures and all the many different oscillations that are out there. This guy is my go-to, and Twitter relies on him as well. A lot of people follow him. So if looking for him, it's at David Birch 214. Very good, reliable resource of information when it comes to ocean temperatures and everything else involved with it, and grand solar minimum. But he's the one that brought this to my attention. And it made me really think about how blatant the cherry picking is here. Of course, the values double when you use the 1951 to 1980 baseline. And NASA says, well, we're at a 0.82. So yeah, we're still pushing the limit according to this map here. But why am I relying on temperatures that are based 6 feet off the ground versus NASA when they talk about, or NOAA, I should say, NOAA, National Weather Service, when they report temperatures, where are the reporting stations at for these temperature gauges? That's right. Highways, runways at airports, rooftop buildings, downtown settings where there's tons of cars running, exhaust running. In France, they broke a record, or they said they broke a record. And guess where the temperature sensor was located at on the so-called record-breaking temperature? It was on a rooftop, a slate rooftop. And they accepted that. They accepted that entry as a legit record for temperature, surface temperature. Unreal. So I don't rely on NOAA's ground sensors to give me if it's warming or not. When you locate your temperature sensors in urban areas, we already know about urban heating, okay? When you put your sensors on rooftops, blacktop. One area actually has a returning food truck that comes back to the same spot of this parking lot, and it's a diesel, and the exhaust is blowing right at the device that records the temperatures. I don't know. I feel like that UAH is a more balanced, realistic reading of our temperatures. And why is that so important? Because we're not an emergency, a climate emergency, and we're getting ready to witness a administration that's going to apply a bunch of new laws and technologies that, yeah, would be good for clean air and clean water. I like both of those, but those green energy things, and a lot of these people are saying they want it done by 2035. Why? That's when it's going to be at its worst. Does anybody in the chat believe that solar panels and wind turbines are going to be enough when it gets negative 25 degrees outside for a few days because we're hitting a rough patch? We're in a deep, deep part of our minimum, grand solar minimum. It's not. It's not. And I'll tell you why. One reason why is that cloud nucleation, the cloud coverage with the cosmic radiation. I mean, we're seeing thicker and low-lying more clouds nowadays. So we're not getting a full charge on these solar panels on these gray days. We get the sun maybe 2 to 4 times a month in upstate New York. I don't know if that has anything to do with being near mountains or what, but I've noticed, even when I lived back home in Southwest Ohio 4 years ago, I noticed the increase, the uptick in cloud formation. It was like, when are we going to get sunny days? We don't get blue skies anymore. That had a lot to do with cosmic radiation and cloud nucleation. So again, the solar thing is troubling to me because I know what I know about the grand solar minimum that we're getting ready to approach, or we've begun, but it's the very tip of it. So it's a slow going thing. We're not really, you think this is crazy, wait a few more years. But what are we going to do when clouds are so dense that we can't get a full charge on the solar? What if we don't have any wind to power those wind turbines? I mean, there's so many questions. We could, we can scale back a little bit. Maybe let's use more natural gas. It's cheap. I think natural gas is great. It heats. It's the best for heating, in my opinion. Well, wood stove is pretty good. But no, think about it. In 2017, the United States dropped their CO2 emissions by 2.3%. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Treaty. So we weren't doing regulations to save the planet, okay? No, what we were doing was we were starting to open up a lot more natural gas and doing more business with natural gas than we were in the past. So naturally, yeah, the CO2 might have dropped a little bit. Who knows? So 2.3% is a lot, though, is what I'm getting at. 2.3% is a lot when you're only contributing 0.004%. So that means out of all the fossil fuels that we use, natural gas is way better on the environment than oil or coal at this point. I mean, that's just facts on when you talk about air pollution and water pollution. That's just facts. I'm not saying either of those causes warming. I'm just saying when it comes to air pollution and water pollution. And I'll tell you another thing. I don't know if you guys live in an area that uses biomass, but I'm concerned about the quality of the drinking water in these towns that rely heavy on biomass. I lived near an area not too long ago, a couple of years ago, that relied on its power from biomass, and there was always a smell in the air of that town, first and foremost, and then the drinking water. You can take a shower, you could smell the smoke from the plant that burns all day long, burns biomass all day long. But you could actually smell the smoke like it's a campfire in the water. So let's just say I went through a lot of water bottles when I lived in that apartment. But point being, guys, we're being conned to believe that we're in this planet, this crisis of a climate that, we're going to die in 12 years, and everybody wants to go, fossil fuel free by 2035 when it's going to be the coldest. And then you got this idiot Bill Gates who wants to launch a program to dim the sun. That's right, folks. He wants to spray particulates in the atmosphere. Can you imagine what those particulates would do when they interacted with cosmic rays? Can you imagine the size of the cloud, the thickness, B, what kind of precipitation would that bring? If you're throwing in heavy, dense chemicals into the atmosphere, particles to dim the sun to help us from warming, okay, I don't know. It's all a bad idea. And, I know there's people out there that believe there's already geoengineering happening now. There is on a small degree. It's not on the level you think it is. Trust me on that. But, people are still going to believe what they want to believe. But yeah, so temperatures, guys, let's agree. Satellite-based temperature reading, I think, is more rational than someone who wants to record temperatures on top of a roof, a slate roof, or a blacktop runway, or a highway. Why don't you ever see the weather stations out in the middle of a field somewhere in God's country? Might get the truth. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, when it comes to this and that, night and day, it's up over a 0.5 degrees centigrade above baseline. Yeah, that'd make me worry a little bit. Sure. That's not the case. And I'll show you that too, guys. Let's go into our GFS outlook, shall we? We got a little bit of snow happening across the Great Lakes and the Midwest. Nothing major, some light dusting. Some of you may just see some flurries, and that's it. Especially across parts of West Virginia, eastern Tennessee, and Kentucky. In the Northeast, most of this is going to be in the North Country of New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And then some light lake effect could affect all the way down to southeast Ohio before bringing in another round of snow by Monday, January 18th. Check that out. So that's new, and that does appear to be also lake effect possible. And as we move into later part of January, now we'll be dealing with snow showers across the western New York region. Back in the Northwest, we got snow across Montana and the western parts of the Dakotas. And then continuing on through January 19th, this lake effect kind of shuts off for a little bit and then turns back on. Another system approaching the Ohio Valley that will bring light snow showers on Wednesday, January 20th. Some rain for folks down there in Texas. Other than that, pretty quiet day. A lot of high pressure, so that's going to bring cold and drier air. This is where we're going to see our polar vortex, colder air enter in the U.S., and it's going to be mainly in the Northern Plains, Great Lakes, and the Northeast for now. And there is indications that we could see another one, not as bad, but still another blast of polar vortex air. Watch this, more snow for the region in New York by January 21st. Again, I believe this is all going to be lake effect driven snow all the way from Michigan into Erie, PA, south towns of Buffalo, and possibly, just possibly, the capital region as well. Some storms and showers moving across Texas into Oklahoma on Friday, January 22nd next week, and another round of snow for the Northwest as well by that weekend as well, the 23rd, finally moving out into the Northern Plains, and that might combine into a pretty nasty looking system here. On January 24th, some moderate snowfall for Wisconsin and Michigan, 3 to 5 inches probably out of this. Just from the looks at it, it's very fast moving. Out of the picture by Tuesday, actually by Monday, late night Monday. So this is where we just like to speculate. I don't usually pay much mind to the forecast past 7 to 8 days. Here we are, January 26th, so we're about 11 days in. We're just getting ideas that we're seeing a stormy track for the south. And there is a couple of things that could happen that could combine these systems from the north and these stormy patterns in the south. So what I'm getting at is that we do have still conditions ripe for a blockbuster snowstorm at some point late January, early February, potentially in the Midwest, Atlantic states to the Northeast. That's my thinking right now. I think that area, in my opinion, from here into here will get a pretty good one before it is all over. But really, cold temperatures for much of the U.S. Let's go take a look at that. I'll just put this in motion here. And this is January 14th, tomorrow. Temperature is pretty nice, actually, for most people. 40 degrees on January 15th is pretty nice. And then here comes more cold air by the 17th of January. That's on Sunday. We start to see that Arctic air approaching the lower 48. Lows in the 20s overnight. That cold front finally pushing down farther south. Here we are, January 19th, the northern plains, getting a dose of it. And then we're going to see what we call a ridge and fridge. Real quick warm up across the south. But then this Arctic air is just too much for it and really is coming down pretty hard. Now, folks, this colder air is a lot bigger than what we were talking about just a couple days ago. And it does look like it's going to reinforce itself for the rest of January across the northern half of the United States. Earlier models were showing that this was going to retreat by late January and then come back a little bit after that. But this cold air Arctic front is keeping temperatures below freezing for much of the end of the month. And then a quick warm-up, and I mean warm-up by 30s and 40s in the Ohio Valley, Kentucky, Tennessee, before another shot of Arctic air comes into lower 48. And there's that second blast that I was telling you that I believe is going to last into early February. So most of the cold air is over here in Eurasia, Russia, all right, and parts of Europe. So most of it is here, but watch what happens as we move through the month of January, the rest of it, I should say. And of course, it's only been sitting here idle for a minute, couldn't be updated. All right, so that cold air really piling up on the other side, January 20th. And then we start to see a little bit of that energy starting to flow across the Arctic Circle. And it almost feels like right in here, we start to see it feeding more Arctic air right about this point here. And that is on January 28th. So this is going to be the shot that reinforces that really cold Arctic air. And look what's happening on the other side. That's right. It is starting to drag out of these areas that's seen the really cold stuff that we've been reporting on, the feet of snow, everything. It's starting what it looks like, could be. Don't hold me to it yet, but we could be seeing a transfer here, and this cold air is on its way. And at the last part of this run here, it does look like that this cold air transfer will dance across the Arctic Circle and end up pushing into the U.S. So stay tuned, folks. Cold weather on the way, colder weather possible. This is what the snowfall is going to look like by January 27th. Start this over so we can kind of give you. So here you are, 15th. This is by Sunday. Not a lot of snow in the United States, but we take it out a little bit further here to Thursday, January 21st, and then by Friday into Tuesday of next week, we have a lot of the northern part of the United States with at least 3 inches or more of fresh fallen snow. And then take it into later next week. Well, let's just say it keeps piling up, especially for you in the Northeast. And look at that snow line going to the south at the end of this run. That's because we're going to see some more Arctic air that's going to reinforce itself and stick around for parts of February as well. Colder than usual. So anybody who told you that it was going to be warm in January and then warmer in February, they missed that one, unfortunately. So, because I'm no genie either. I can't predict. I can only speculate on what I've seen and learn from my observations. I've heard reports, though, that we are seeing La Nina strengthening. That is not the indication right now. Right now, it looks like it's chilling out and staying where it wants. But when you look at this map, now this was impressive to me. I've never seen, in the years that I've covered this, I've never seen the water's this cool right here. And I was reading today about where my arrow is right here, that we are dealing with some pretty serious upwelling. This is the 24-hour anomaly. So colder water than usual, especially right here. We're dealing with some major upwelling when you're seeing temperatures like this. And it's predicted that we could see some pretty cold temperatures by February, March. So this La Nina is not done. And things are only starting to get a little bit interesting. You've got polar vortexes to watch out for. And now we have this possibility of a La Nina that could show its face, its ugly face for sure in February, March. For most of us here in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the Northern Plains states. And, the South, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, you guys have seen some snow. So that's not, in fact, right now, everybody's had a pretty good chance at snow across the United States so far. And here is the global sea surface temperature. It is coming in at 0.116 degrees above baseline. It is trending downward. So you tell me, folks, how are we warming when we are watching trends like this happening? Just curious. This is global sea surface temperature anomaly for one day. It has been on the downtrend and it's staying flatline right now, but it is still down and ticking just a little bit more south than we have seen. So, all right, that's going to do it for me tonight here on the Grand Solar Minimum. I want to say hello to a few people out there in the chat. Knife Collector, good to see you. Arnold, hello, how you doing? Very enthusiastic gardener. By the way, let's not get ahead of ourselves yet. We got to get past this weekend. Hello to Matt Bros. How you doing out there, bud? Good to see you out here as well. Scott Bros, no relation. They spell their names differently. And a lot of new faces as well, seen in the chat as well. Jake Green, hello. Participating quite a bit there. Guys, we appreciate you tuning into the Grand Solar Minimum channel for your latest on Grand Solar Minimum news and up-to-date news on climate as well. Until next time, folks, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday night, 7:30, for another live Grand Solar Minimum update. Until then, we'll talk soon, folks. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.